I was getting ready for a board meeting this week, and that involves looking at some of the different details of the church, and one of them is how many adults are here, how many kids are here, and in Nipawin, and it's really encouraging to see what's happening the last few weeks. And I thought, I wonder if we've ever been this full, because we put some more chairs in, and it's the sight test doesn't always give an accurate picture, and no, we've been more full than this before, but about the same actually about 3 years ago. So then I was like, well, why does it feel different? If we've been this full before, then what's the difference? And I think well, we have been this full before. We've never been this hungry. We are more and more wanting to move into those things that God has for us and experience Him more than we ever have. And a lot of this morning, the stuff Chris talked about is stuff Teresa talked about. Those are great ways to grow in your experience. But to truly grow in your experience of Jesus, you have to have a new experience of Jesus. This is just basic logic, really. To have a new experience, you need a new experience. Thank you, Nathan. That's helpful. Same with capacity, right? If you're going to grow in your capacity to serve and volunteer, what you don't do is say, I'm going to take a break for a while. It does nothing for your capacity. The things that grow capacity are growing your capacity. So this morning, we're going to look at Jesus a little bit differently than we've maybe grown accustomed to. And I should probably welcome Nipawin to this morning too. We're going to look at a really familiar text for most Christians, because it's like one of the first ones you learn if you grow up in a church as a kid, and it's just kind of, it's really sticky because Jesus is the only one who ever can do something like what we're going to be reading about. But to get us there, let me first ask you this question: how do you feel about personality quizzes? You a fan? Okay, don't cheer too loud, because I have this theory I'm developing. The more scared you are about life, the more you like personality quizzes. Because they give you labels to control things that are otherwise out of your control. And while that's helpful to navigate people around you and understand them, perhaps if it goes too far, it really can reduce how you see somebody. So I like being able to understand people and finding out that, yes, they're a number 8, or they're choleric, or they're whatever test it is. But I don't like it when I've been on the receiving end of somebody assigning a label to me, right? So maybe I'm like a Doberman or something in this quiz, or a German Shepherd maybe. No, wait, that's angry too. Golden Retriever, right? It could be one or the other. And this happened a few years ago, that the animal I was assigned had all these characteristics, and I'm like, I don't really sound like the kind of animal you'd want to spend a lot of time with. And then we were having a meeting, and there's an issue that came up, and I was like, well, why don't we just do this? And somebody said, well, it's easier for you to say because no one can ever hurt your feelings. You're this kind of animal. I was like, it hurts my feelings when you say I'm the kind of person whose feelings aren't hurt. So we have these categories that help us understand, that help us master what's mysterious. But you can never forget about the mystery, because so few things that are worth knowing can be fully explained. But in our fear, what we do is we try to master it, we try to understand it, and every time we do that with something that's too big to truly understand, our category gets really small. So you do that with a person, and you're anticipating their responses, and you know what they're going to do, but they might do some other things, but you just totally don't catch it, you don't see it, you can't experience it because it's so very narrow. And my fear is that we've all done that with God to some extent. We have tried to master Him. We've tried to domesticate Jesus. We've, in the process, shrunk Him. And so when He does things that are, to use the cliche, out of our box, we can miss it. And so we get stuck at a place of immaturity because we can't experience something bigger. I believe when most of us have come across this text in our lives, these verses have been about mastery. They've been about Jesus' mastery of the created world, and you'll see how masterful he is. But I think there's a side to it that's about mystery. And when we come to the text, we're actually not going to try and master it, because mastering is something that you admire, but you don't fall in love with mastery, you fall in love with mystery. Mastery shrinks something, mystery enlarges it. Mastery interprets it, and here's kind of getting to like the Bible part. Mastery tries to interpret the Bible, mystery imagines it. And so we are going to part interpret, but put a heavier emphasis on imagining this morning. Let's read the text in question that we will, yes, interpret, but we will probably more importantly imagine so that we can experience more mystery. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. Now, there's an interesting thing happening here. You imagine you're the Roman government and you have 4,000 Jews out in the wilderness, and their leader moves them into 12 tribes and impresses them by feeding them. There's a revolution brewing. In the book of John at this point, Jesus shuts it down because the people want to make him king. They want to, are you ready? Let's march. We've got somebody here who can feed us. We've got somebody here who can organize us. What else can he do? Let's go. Jesus doesn't want that to happen. He shuts it down quickly. That's the reason for the immediately. It's like, disciples, get out of here. Crowd, get out of here. Disciples in the boat, and then Jesus walks up this mountainside. Verse 46, after leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on the land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. We've seen a scene similar to this a few chapters earlier. Jesus is sleeping in a boat, but the way that story unfolds, that is a really serious, like life-threatening deal that's going on. Experienced sailors in a stormy sea, and they're saying, "Wake up, don't you care? We might die." There's none of that fear here. It's more just like we are rowing so hard and getting nowhere. The wind is against us. So this isn't a crisis type of thing. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them. So he sees them struggling, he watches for a while, and then in the fourth watch of the night, just before dawn, he goes out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them. Is there a stranger text in the entire Bible? You're straining at the oars. Jesus' intention, it seems, is to just cruise on by. Just to breeze past, just before dawn, walking on the water. But when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. So they start freaking out, and you would be freaking out. Screaming, yelling. They all saw him, and they were terrified. They didn't recognize him at that stage. You don't expect to see this, really. Immediately he spoke to them, and he's like, "Take care, it's me, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay." Like, just, Andrew, stop screaming. He comes to the boat, climbs in, the wind completely dies down. They were completely amazed. And then this, for they had not understood about the loaves, their hearts were hardened. Okay, let's stop there. Crazy scene. And yes, it's about mastery. What is frustrating to us is not to Jesus, because he can master things that we can't. So we take courage and heart because of his mastery, that he is strong enough to meet us when we're straining in life and to help us. That's good. We understand that one. Let's keep going. But there's just so much more mystery here. So let's imagine the text and not interpret it. Here's an imagination question. Whatever possesses a 33-year-old carpenter to walk out on the water, what's he thinking? Can I suggest to you, if you didn't have your religious hat on, if you didn't feel the need to take everything Jesus does and turn it into this timeless, sacred principle, if you just said, what would a 30-year-something guy be thinking doing this to a bunch of people in their late teens and early 20s? You would probably come up with, guys, the same reason you would do it. You want to scare the living daylights out of them. You want to give them a memory that just rocks them for the rest of their life. And you're going to just go with it. Here's the risk I'm taking, is that I'm making maybe Jesus more like me, and be upfront like that. I used to really like scaring people, and then it kind of went bad. I don't even know why, but I found myself in this situation where I thought, I'm going to scare my daughter. And I was probably like 25, so old enough to know better. And I'm like, I'm going to just crawl under her bed, and then it'll be fun. We'll make this memory, and just ridiculous. So I'm lying under the bed, and Tamara comes in with her to tuck her in. And I'm lying there, and they're doing their prayers and talking. I'm like, this is taking a long time. But that time makes me realize how stupid this is. And it's tough to come out of this looking good. Because if you wait a long time, and you wait till your daughter falls asleep, and Tamara's wondering where you are, and she happens by the bedroom just as you're rolling out from under the bed, it looks really, really strange. And you can't, you're going to terrify them. So I'm lying there thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm on the fly. I'm trying to think of how to make this less terrifying. So I think I'm going to say words that aren't scary. Like, I love you. So good plan, Nathan. Lying there in the softest voice I can muster. I love you. Tamara just lets out this blood-curdling scream. She is like, there is a voice under the bed that loves us. This is not good. Acacia, no word of a lie, goes, I love you too, Daddy. Which is, it's good. It's, hopefully there's not therapy later on for her. Tamara's probably still working it out. So at that stage, I'm like, I need to rethink this as a hobby. So I imagine Jesus. You know what would be kind of fun? I'm going to go scare them. And then he's cruising on the water, and he's like, this is really going to take years off their life. I'm just going to pass them by. Then they see him. It's like, shoot, they're freaking out, like they're overboard. Then he goes over, and he settles them down. With your need for mastery on the side and your desire to embrace mystery, consider this. When you read interpretations or commentators on this particular text, they do two things that I actually think look really different on the surface but are the same when you put them together. Some say this is Jesus' most divine moment. This is when he looks most like God. This is when he shows dominion over all creation, and he just walks on the water. He doesn't even have to say a word. He just crawls in the boat. The storm stops. Others say this is Jesus' most playful moment that we have recorded. And can you imagine when they told the story around the fire later? There's still adrenaline surging through these poor guys. Is it the moment where Jesus looks more like God? And some of us will go, or is it when he's most playful? As if it's one or the other. Except it can't be one or the other, because everything we know about God, Jesus shows us. The rest is guesswork. So what Jesus is showing us here is that God is playful. And he is mysterious. And we don't know why he does things. Jesus, if you wanted to help them, why didn't you just walk to the shore, put your magic toe in the water, and still it? Jesus, why didn't you just turn the wind around? Why didn't you just give them supernatural strength? Like if you were actually wanting to help them. All these different ways to do it. Why did you go panic, scare the heck out of them route? And then why did it seem like you wanted to pass them by? Why? And if we find answers to that, we go shrink, 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 shrink. And then Jesus does something that's beautiful and kind of quirky and playful, that reveals his heart. And you say, that wasn't him. And what you miss out on because of your desire for mastery instead of mystery, that you would reduce Jesus to being, he's this and not that, this and not this and that, and then you miss out on so much amazing stuff that Jesus might do. For most of my life, I've been way more about mastery than mystery. Because here's what I thought. The more you can explain, the more you understand. The more you can explain, the more you understand. That's what I thought. But I'm coming to see that the more you can explain, usually the more you miss. And so I'm moving towards mystery. Sometimes Jesus does things. Sometimes there's like 40 people at a wedding, and he gives them 1 billion liters of wine. And you try and figure out why. Or maybe you just realize sometimes he does things according to his character, not according to our need. And his playful heart, the playful heart of God, delights to do things that he delights to do. And we might not understand it. Doesn't mean we have to miss it. You can celebrate it. You can sit around the fire afterwards. You can enjoy it. So what might you be missing? I remember a story from a sermon last year about, and I remember thinking about the story, well, why would Jesus do that? Little guy in our church who's growing up in a kids ministry that is way more about mystery than mastery, way more about experiencing God than explaining him. So he doesn't have some of the hang-ups that somebody like I would, who associated explaining with understanding. He's playing Legos. You maybe remember the story because it stands out, and suddenly these Legos start sticking to the wall. His mom's like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I'm playing with Jesus, and Jesus is making the Legos stick to the wall. I hear that story, I'm like, is there a book of the Bible I don't know about where Jesus prophesies about sticking Legos to the wall? Help me understand this. Well, I think there might be a text, and I think we might have just read it. Of all the things you could do in planet Earth, Jesus, all the hungry kids, my sore knee, my fractured marriage, you're taking the time to put Legos on the wall? Of all the things you could have done, Jesus, you're actually going to go for a walk on the water? Scare the heck out of the disciples, really bad plan, confuse the rest of us for all eternity about why you did it. There would be a better way, Jesus, if you just did it this, that. So you don't want to miss out on some of the quirky, playful parts of God, because you'll admire his mastery. You'll be impressed by the things that he does. But you might get to a place where you're frustrated because mastery says, if I do this, then the God I know and understand is really predictable. If I do this, then he does this. And then when he doesn't do that, because he's playful and quirky and does what he wants to do, you'll be disappointed in him, but you'll maybe miss out that he's done this and this and this and this and this. And if you could only see it, it's so much better than this. If you lived in the mystery instead of the mastery, you'd be able to see what he's doing. And you'd grow to love him instead of struggle with some of the disappointment that's there when you've done your part and he hasn't done his. That's the problem of somebody who God has shrunk to the predictable God who keeps predictable promises in predictable ways when I do X, Y, and Z. He is not like that. On a whim, he decides, I'm going to walk out on the water. The other good thing, assuming that one was a good thing, it is a good thing. You want to live in the mystery and experience him, be surprised by him, fall in love with him instead of admire him. And isn't mystery the parts of people you love? Right? Robots are really not mysterious. If you have a deep love for a robot, Prayer teams are here to help you with that. No, we love the mystery, as messy as it gets. We love the mystery. Here's one other thing that I think is beautiful about mystery. Our job, our primary task as humans is to look like God. Jesus is going throughout his life restoring people to look like God, healthy, whole, of sound mind, on mission, working for creation, working for each other, upside down. But if you miss out because you shrunk God, then you're trying to become something incomplete. And if you've shrunk it so far that God is somber and incredibly disciplined, God's really good at solitude and fasting. Those are important things, they're big parts of my life. But where I need to move is the playfulness, the lightheartedness of God, the effortless playing of God with the people around me and the enjoying of the creation that I have some dominion over. I can't walk on water, but I can enjoy creation in a whole bunch of other ways. And to understand that as I do that, I'm becoming like him, that's a beautiful gift that this text gives you. Don't mistake becoming a Christian for your soul and your personality shrinking and becoming like a Christian mold. No, you actually get more vast and mysterious because you're becoming like a God who has endless mystery, endless options, endless creativity as he plays with his creation. It's a beautiful poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins, and one of the last lines is this: Christ plays in 10,000 places, in lives and limbs that aren't his. Christ plays in you and through you to the people around you. Now, one last thing. Don't go so far as to hide underneath somebody's bed. Probably didn't need to say that. But those of you who are concerned about your friends knowing Jesus, what are you showing them? You're trying to get them to smarten up, be serious? Take this stuff seriously. You can't take it with you. Right, that kind of approach? Or are you being really playful? Are you quirky and delightful? Because you have it in you. I'm going to invite the band back and turn it over to Neepawa. And as we sing, I will invite the Holy Spirit to take some of the shame off of you and the weight that has suppressed the beautiful personality, the diversity, and the quirkiness that God has given you as a way to show the world him. Let's stand and sing.